Just as we were wrapping up our camera review for this phone, Huawei pushed out a fairly significant update addressing camera performance. The more we compared shots, the more it became clear we needed to reshoot this review. The Mate 9 is an impressive package of big screen and big specs. And taking a look at this second generation dual camera shooter, you can pause the video here to see what hardware we'll be checking out. Now buckle up folks, we've got a lot of ground to cover and I'm gonna move pretty quick. Starting with exposure and saturation, Leica's second partnership with Huawei impresses. The Mate 9 plays with light unlike any other phone we've reviewed, aside from the Huawei P9 of course. Color information is captured by one sensor, and then exposure and light info is painted in from the monochrome sensor. It produces JPEGs which appear to have a wider dynamic range, with less detail lost in brighter sections of an exposure. Leica's image processing is more aggressive this go-around, however. There's a soft touch to color processing, but numerous modes, settings, and options to filter your output for a more photographic look. Blues and greens are fantastically captured. Browns and earth tones look rich in afternoon light. Yellows look delicious, just bordering on clipping information but saved by that monochrome sensor. And reds were tricky. Often we found this phone slightly exaggerating the exposure or pushing our saturation into magenta territory. Reds are always tricky for digital sensors, but for most setups in daylight, walking back the brightness a half stop seems to land better accuracy. And a white flower in direct sunlight, just a touch clipped on these petals, but perfectly exposed for the tiny structures in the center of the flower. While color processing is often rich, on the whole we found the white balance on this phone usually slid a little too cool for our tastes. Capturing a subject in shade, output can feel icy, which really isn't appropriate for Southern California, even during our, quote, winter season. As mentioned before, JPEGs capture incredible detail even in slightly overexposed sections of your photos. Looking at the RAW files, we've got a ton of data to play with for editing. Purposely overexposing the scene, it's really no issue walking it back 2.5 stops to recover almost all of the info lost in highlights. This phone is a monster performer, offering settings and modes which rival standalone cameras. But this strength is also the Mate's biggest weakness. This app is complicated, sliding gestures, settings which live in some modes but not others. I've been shooting with this phone for months and I still find myself occasionally missing an option or mode. Consumers who opt for this phone should give themselves a little time to work out all the memorizing for where their favorite features are located. We also faced a mean little gremlin with the manual focus not remembering the focus from shot to shot. Trying to take a long exposure after adjusting the ISO, we'd routinely have to refocus the shot, which was really annoying. Moving on, post-software update, Huawei focused on zoom performance, and the new Hybrid 6x zoom is something of a mixed bag. Sliding into a 2x zoom, the phone's software processing easily competes with the iPhone 7 Plus's hardware zoom. Pushing beyond that territory, we are running into the limits of what this lens and sensor can resolve, and output starts to look like the same crops we might get from other devices. In good light with a steady hand, you can use this to get some impressive macro shots though. And as this is a software scan from a larger camera sensor, nighttime shots come out a lot better than on Apple's smaller sensor zoom solution. Speaking of macro performance, the Mate's minimum focusing distance is on par with other high-end phones. The slightly smaller f2.2 aperture delivers competitive background blur naturally, and it's easy to create some bokeh balls using the manual focus. Of course, two camera sensors using the same focal length lenses deliver excellent depth information. The Mate 9 is the undisputed champ of software blur. Far more flexible than Apple's portrait mode, better in low light, better in close-up, and allowing users to adjust blur after the shot's been taken. It's a fantastically fun feature to play with, and only seems to get confused when pushing small details to their limits. It won't unseat a DSLR with a fast prime, but it gets you pretty darn close. Focusing action is smooth and reliable, but the Mate won't go down as a speed champion. It was rare we'd find a photo misfocused, but we do wish this phone would roll onto your subject just a little bit faster. Now, Huawei and Leica have spruced up HDR output, now more noticeably different from standard auto photos. We get a bit more of the processed look now, pulling down highlights, juicing up colors. Capture is a little on the slow side though. This flower in wind was blowing around too much to achieve a clear capture. In addition to HDR, we also get quick toggles for color filters, aggressively boosting saturation and contrast while also doing a little vignetting. It's odd that these are separate menu options from these other filters where we have to slide a menu over to get HDR. But if you want that hyped up picture look, say from a Samsung circa Galaxy S3, you can get your hyper color action on. Unfortunately, the Mate doesn't seem to have quite the same panorama prowess as the P9 did. In this busy scene, we see lots of stitching breaks. And I hate taking selfies, but the Mate packs an upper pack performer. A solid output in bright light and shade, we get a solid, if a bit shaky, 1080p video. Another area improved post-update is low light performance. The algorithms for cleaning noise out of nighttime shots are well improved. Dual sensors plus hardware image stabilization deliver easy handheld shots in street scenes. A creepy tunnel shows off terrific lens quality, some flaring, and a little optical distortion, but a top-tier performer. Our creepy gate almost perfectly nails the yellow light, and the exposure is spot on for how dim this scene really is. It's the last time we'll see this walkway. The phone easily delineates between these two bulbs, though the hotspots under each bulb are a touch larger than I'd like. And this weird plant thing in almost no light wonderfully captured considering the phone was handheld. The cool thing about the layout for these sensors, a blind rear camera selfie is really easy. You just make eye contact with the camera and you're pretty well lined up. And lastly, if you give me manual controls, I'll never get tired of shooting some long exposure streaking taillights. The phone has a light painting mode which builds light streaks like a video, but honestly the exposure just looks more natural from using a longer shutter speed. Moving over to video, it's significantly improved over previous Huawei's. Now capable of capturing UHD resolution with hardware stabilization, the phone uses H.265 compression to deliver significantly smaller file sizes than most other phones while maintaining a crisp, colorful, contrasty output. Color processing feels similar to photos, though we don't seem to benefit from both sensors in the same way. It's likely too difficult to balance the sensors and process high-resolution video, so it's a bit easier to blow out highlights in bright conditions. Night shots look wonderful. The Mate is not afraid of noise. And these shots have quite a bit of texture, but output is detailed and we're preserving info over using too heavy a hand in noise reduction. And in video, we can get a better look at image stabilization, but it feels a bit first generation still. This is shakier output than what you'll find on many other competitors. Even when trying to hold still, this video still feels pretty lively. While walking, the lens is able to help rein in footfalls, but it's not capable of delivering that Steadicam feel. When shooting 1080p, you can use a hybrid software plus hardware stabilization, but this is a perfect example of why I usually don't like mixing stabilizations. The lens is moving, creating subtle warping and distortion, then the software tries to crop the scene around those movements, and the final output is disjointed, some pieces of the scene seemingly moving independently of others. I think you're better off just shooting UHD or disabling software stabilization. The audio game is on point though, high quality capture with even-handed noise reduction. Over this freeway, we were in the middle of a windstorm that was physically moving me around, yet the phone managed to reduce wind noise and still preserve some audio from the scene. In our nighttime street shot, after the winds had calmed down, we hear a delicious difference between a bus and a throaty muscle car. It's not as robust as an LG V20, but Huawei's audio solution is very well done indeed. Now, checking out an exposure test moving from dark to bright and back, the phone blooms nicely in making adjustments. Moving to brighter conditions feels a bit more aggressive as the shutter speed changes, but this is one of the better performers of the year in adjusting to changing light conditions. Lastly, slow motion video is difficult to pin down. The phone shoots a 120 frame per second 1080p, but when you save the file to watch on another device, it kinda wrecks the quality. If we take the raw 120 frame per second video and stretch it in a video editor, it looks a lot better. Hopefully something Huawei can address in a future software update. So let's wrap this up. Where's that leave us with the cameras on the Huawei Mate 9? This phone is not for the faint of heart. This is the most complicated phone shooter we've yet reviewed, and the learning curve here is the steepest we've yet encountered. It's not that any individual mode is difficult to use, more that learning to navigate the app takes a while as menus and settings are spread out over multiple areas. In the moment, when you just need to capture a shot, this phone requires more brute force memorization to really take advantage of everything it has to offer. The Mate 9 will go down as one of my personal favorite phone cameras of 2016, but it also tops the list as the most intimidating to new users. We think the time investment is worth it though. This phone produces unique still photos, and going back over our samples has been a joy. As is the improved video. It could still use a bit more polish, but Huawei is much improved here as well. And we're just happy to see the attention this phone has recently received. Where the Mate was a solid option out of the box, this recent update really has improved low-light processing. We're hopeful that Huawei will continue to refine as owners learn more about the phone they've purchased. It's not the easiest beast to tame, but we think it's worth it when you do. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to this channel for our full Mate 9 coverage, including dual camera showdowns between the iPhone 7 Plus and the LG V20, and help us out with some sharing on your favorite social networks. For Pocket Now, I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, some gadget guy on Twitter and Instagram, and I will catch you all on the next review.